That's it. It's all over. Claire and I fell out. Who thought we'd fall out over how to set a KPI? Welcome to this week's podcast. Welcome to the Profit Cash Growth Podcast. This is the podcast for 6 and 7 figure business owners who are looking to grow a financially successful business. My co-host, Claire Hancott, is a finance director, chartered accountant and entrepreneur. And every week, I'll be exploring guidance and frameworks designed to help you increase your profits, improve your cash flow and grow your business. Why do you think it is that turn it off and turn it on again works in every instance?
Yeah, it's the classic IT trick, isn't it? Even if you don't work in IT, you can just sort of wheel that out and you can at least 50% of the time fix the issue. Do
you think part of the training to become a help desk person for IT, the first bit of training is ask them to turn it off and turn it on again?
Do you know what, though? It does solve a lot of the problems, but I do feel sorry for IT people sometimes because they get a bit of a bad rep. It's a little bit like the accountancy world, isn't it? Like, oh, you just post invoices, you don't do anything. And
well, the thing is, I mean, talk about a job that can be replaced by ChatGPT. I mean, that is really like, my printer's not working. What do you want? Step 1, turn it off, turn it on again. Yeah. Step 2. I mean, they literally, IT help desk people literally do a worse job of what now ChatGPT does to give you a step-by-step of how to fix every one of your technical issues. That's the problem now with AI. Like, everything I want to do, it's like every bit of software we have, it's like I just literally give it the broadest. I'm struggling with this, and it's like, it's right, step 1. What I love about AI is it gives you that foolproof step by step that actually most humans can't be asked to write out because it's such a pain. They'll even give you screenshots and all sorts. So I think help desk jobs are at danger because
do you know what? I use a system for LinkedIn called Use Aware, and it basically you just use that platform instead of logging on to sort of LinkedIn because it's just better. It's better functionality, better for scheduling posts and things like that. And they've got a really good chatbot that if you're struggling with anything, you go on and it literally does that AI version of like, here's some screenshots, this is what you're looking for, click here, tell me when you're done, I'll give you the next step. It's really, really fantastic. But what it isn't good at is when your problem isn't solved, it then seems to get stuck in a loop and goes back to the beginning and repeats the same stuff again. But it's really good. Step 1 sort of help desk or support services provided by AI is brilliant.
I wasn't going to go down this route, but actually it's really interesting because my team, I've just said this with my team this morning, like we're really trying to get them into this mindset of self-serve on AI, self-serve. Don't push the problem up the chain to the, what's this, what's that. And even our branch manager this morning, like, because all that's happening is basically what has always happened with Google, where I said this the other day, we've had Google for 20 years, but people still can't solve their own problems.
Yeah, but it wasn't that easy on Google because you had to sift through what Google delivered up for you and decide what the right answer was to follow.
But that isn't the problem, as I've learned.
What's the problem?
I don't know whether I don't want to define it as laziness or just I forgot that was an option. But like now you've got the option with ChatGPT. Don't matter how much you hammer it home. Like I've just had one this morning that somebody's just asking me about, whether somebody could build a shed in the grounds of a grade 2 listed building. And I'm just like, well, like all I'm going to do is ask ChatGPT, paste the answer and send it to you. I'm actually going to ask it to send to put it in an email format that can go back to the buyer that outlines that. And it did exactly that. And I'm just like, and I said to my member of staff there, I'm like, why didn't you just do that? Oh yeah, I forgot we could do that. And it's just the same with Google. I think I don't want to like put it as laziness, but often I just find like it's easier for them to just push the problem up the hill to somebody else than it is to go and solve the problem. And it's that problem solver mentality. Why? I just wonder with AI, why would that change what a human does? A human could have always solved the problem themselves. Like we get it with tenants as well. Like my key isn't going in the lock. They don't try anything else before they just or push the problem away to someone else?
So this is something that we've started trying to screen in our recruitment process, and we ask people like different questions about problems. We ask them what they do in those scenarios, and we're basically looking for somebody to show some initiative, even if they give a bloody stupid answer, show some initiative and try something to fix the problem. But the amount of people that click the button that says, I'll speak to my manager, and if they click that button, they will never, ever work for us.
So actually, do you think anything's going to change? Because actually, the problem isn't the technology or the availability of the information. The problem is a human being what's called solutions orientated. And actually, a tiny percentage of people have that mindset.
There's two things though, isn't there? You've got to have people that think in that solutions orientated world and taking responsibility for the issue rather than trying to pass it on. But you've then also got to have a culture where people feel empowered to act and they're not scared of doing something that makes it worse. If I've got an IT issue and I break it and it gets worse, then what? And if you've got a culture where people are reprimanded or belittled or laughed at or told off for doing that, then people will never take their own initiative. So it's twofold. You've got to have the right culture where people can try and fail, but then you've also got to have the right people. So
given that entire thing hasn't changed from the past to what's going to happen in the future, ultimately, is AI going to make any difference whatsoever? Or are the tiny amount of businesses that do generate a really good culture that really will do well with it and it'll be fine, but everyone else, will be in the same place? Nobody's going to get better because they're not going to use they're just not going to use it.
But I think that the hardest bit to get right is the culture. And if you get the culture right, people will by default take the initiative.
I agree.
And that actually the issue is not that people don't have initiative, it's that people are scared to act without permission. And you need to create a culture where people don't need permission.
I agree. So my point is, you've put words in your own mouth there by saying, but the hardest thing is building that culture.
Yeah.
It's always been the hardest thing. So we're not going to suddenly have more companies that have that culture. It's still going to be just as hard and most people are not going to do it. So therefore, actually, is it going to change much at all? Or just a small amount of really good companies going to just continue to be really good and be better?
But if people could change their culture, it's incredible.
It could be. Well, the gap now has got bigger.
Yes.
Because the tools, if you can embrace the tools are massive. But the difference between basically the culture of, I'm not going to embrace the tools. When the tool was Google, the gap was big. When the tool's AI, the gap is like gargantuan.
Yeah. So you've got to build that culture in your business where people feel empowered to take control. They're not waiting for permission to act. And if you're a business owner that's controlling or can be critical when things go wrong, then your team will never feel safe to take the initiative.
Now, I didn't expect us to talk for as long about this, but it's been really, really interesting. So in some ways, I'm glad we are.
Leads on to
and I've just about to say,
to
this leads on really nicely to this week's news story of the week. So, Claire, this week's news story of the week, I picked out, it was in the newspaper at the weekend, and oh my God, it made my blood boil. So, you've heard of this fad that's gone around called quiet quitting. We've talked about it on the podcast before, where people just basically work from home and they just keep their head down, but they don't really do a lot for a company and they fly under the radar and they get paid and all the rest of it. Well, there's now a new thing which has come out called revenge quitters. And this is a thing that's been going really wild on social media, where employees have been going out trying to drum up basically support for saying that when you do finally quit your job, that you should revenge quit. So basically what this means, revenge quitting, is basically a modern phenomenon where an employee walks out of the business at the single most inconvenient time they can and does the most disruption to the company, such as deleting company files in a protest against the way that they've been treated. So this was a survey of over 2,000 workers by the Reed Group, the big recruitment company, found that 15% of them have revenge quit, have enacted this particular thing. And there was a story here of a lady. One example she gave in her thing was that she waited until 4:55 p.m. on Friday night to resign, in the knowledge that it would absolutely screw them over for the weekend, basically, and for the following week. So she waited till the last possible time to do that. Again, just because she said, and she even put on her Instagram, I packed all my things and enjoyed watching her meltdown, talking about her manager.
I mean, the most classic example of this is when somebody quits just before they go on holiday, or they're supposed to give 4 weeks notice, but they've already got holiday booked for 2 of that, so they're actually given 2 weeks notice. It's that kind of thing. So, I mean, honestly, I think there's two things here. Firstly, employees that do this, just scummy. There are not that many employees that really are treated that badly by their employers, but also they're absolutely deluded. I mean, these people that think they can bring down these big businesses by quitting, I know,
they think the world revolves around them.
They're so deluded
like,
about the actual impact that it has on the business.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, from a small business perspective, this is where processes, procedures, systems are so important, because if that happens and somebody does leave, then the only gap that you've got is a resource issue, and you don't have a knowledge gap issue.
Yes.
And that's what you've got to protect yourself against. So I think this is a bit of a sensational news story.
Of course it is. It was a bit of fun, but I mean, it's just, it's disgusting, really. And I don't think you do find this in small businesses really much, because in small businesses, people know each other and the culture is usually very good. This is very much aimed at that big business mentality where, people feel like a bit of a number. And the irony is that in big businesses, it makes even littler impact because there's such a dot in the ocean.
Yeah.
It doesn't really rock the boat, just makes them feel a bit better. A couple of people commenting on this. A chief executive of the work psychologist said, especially towards Gen Z, I think there's currently a total and utter disconnection with the reality of what it takes to be successful and earn good money, she said.
Yeah.
Which you've said before, haven't you? And Reed responded to the survey saying their advice as a recruiter would be to stop and think, you never know where you might meet your boss again, or that you may need a job or a reference.
Do you know what? This is so
Don't
true.
burn your bridges, they used to say in my day.
So true. Like, because I look back at my career history now, and I had a job working in Leighton Buzzard as a management accountant about 15 years ago, and now they are my neighbour. My office is next door to that old business that I used to work at, and it was so awkward.
Yeah.
When I left my job and I was doing consultancy work, I was in touch with the FD there about doing some consultancy work for them. The same when I left my corporate job, they kept me on for a number of months doing some projects and helping with some acquisitions they were making and things like that. So yeah, I mean, I could have got disgruntled about a few things that had happened, sure. But, really in the grand scheme of things, nobody in any business, I don't think, is ever deliberately trying to upset their employees. And I think this is generally life. People are not doing things to you. Nobody is going about their day thinking, oh, how can I upset Claire today? Like, yes, people will upset me. Yes, people will do things that I don't like, but they're not doing it deliberately to me. And thinking that somebody is doing that.
It's actually the opposite.
It's just ridiculous.
I was listening to somebody recently, a psychologist who was talking about, this, and you're saying that actually, believe it or not, it's quite the opposite, that actually pretty much everyone goes about their day trying to make people happy, trying to improve things. So what's happening when that is not the way you're receiving it is that there's a communication disconnect or a disconnect in mindsets or something that needs more questioning to understand why they're going about it in that way, actually. Because, I do believe in every walk, like people there's a lot of bad things there, but often a lot of these things are driven by bad processes and systems, not by a bad individual.
Yeah.
And actually the individual just gets the brunt of it.
There aren't that many bad people in the world in reality. But I read something quite interesting on social media the other day, and it was like this rant, and it had literally like hundreds of thousands of likes and comments on it. And it was by an employee that was ranting about how they do all the hard work, but somebody else got promoted above them, and now they're their boss and they're dead lazy and they don't do this and they don't do that. All they do is schmooze the management. And
maybe he should take the lead that all you should do is all you should do.
And I commented on this, and I really regret doing it, and I got a ton of backlash from people. And there was a few other people in there saying a similar thing to what I was saying. But fundamentally, if you do not understand that in order to progress in a company, relationships and being able to negotiate with people, build long-term relationships, compromise, find a way forward together, if you don't understand that all of that is part of progressing in an organisation and it's not down to how many hours you work, then you're not ready for that promotion anyway. So there's a reason the other person that schmoozes the management, in your words, got promoted and not you. And I think there is just this massive, massive disconnect between what is required to get by and progress in life versus what is actually happening, because people so think it is down to the amount of work that they do, and it is not.
Yep. No,
it's the impact that you have, and there's multiple ways to achieve impact.
It's just a small task-orientated view of looking at things. It's not, they just look at their tasks and think that the world revolves around them. That's the challenge.
We've got a really well-honed podcast this week, because this really does lead quite nicely onto our deep dive of the week too, doesn't it?
Well, in a minute, I'll find out. So, Claire, go on then. How's this link?
Well, the link
So
is
today
about...
we're talking about how to set a KPI that actually works, aren't we?
Yes, and this is about getting the most out of your team and having a high-performing team and how you can make sure that
you've
people
made it about
are...
the team. I mean, the KPI could be about the sales. Why is it about the teams?
Well, somebody in your team has to deliver that KPI, don't they? So it's always about a person.
Fighting talk. I like it. It's like a politician's answer. Well, technically, the sales and the operations, they're all delivered through people.
Well, there's no business without its people. But, I've been there, particularly in the earlier days as a manager. I would get quite frustrated about why my team are not doing... I've told you to do this. Why are you not doing this?
No, I know.
And
what I said earlier about
other
people,
times,
ChatGPT and stuff, they just use the initiative, yeah.
And other times you set what you think is a clear objective or a clear KPI, but it has unintended consequences. The most classic that I see time and time again is a directive to the sales team to grow sales. Increase the sales. Just go and grow the sales.
Right.
That's the only thing I want you to focus on.
The worst one, grow market share.
Yeah, and it's like, okay.
I can't think of a worse metric than grow our market share.
So you might have one salesperson that then goes out there and they're sourcing all these customers that are actually a real pain in the arse to deal with. They demand a lot from you. They make it really hard to deliver excellent service. They complain all the time. They spread, negative reviews about your business. They're not the types of customers you want. You've got other people that will go out and discount to win the business because you said grow the top line sales number. So that's what they're doing. And now all of a sudden your margins are suffering and you're not making any profit because of it.
Yeah. I think it was Ricky Gervais that put this really succinctly. He said, you just have to be very specific, because if somebody says, I want to be famous, the quickest and easiest way to be famous is to go and rape and murder someone.
That is bloody brilliant.
But that is not that's not what you were intended, but it got you famous. So that is a very extreme version of why it's important to actually not just set a KPI, but set the right KPI, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're absolutely right. Grow market share, grow sales, whatever else. You could be out of business in you could be out of a business in a year's time because you've got no cash.
The other thing I see a lot of the time, particularly like in the finance world, is about keeping cash longer. So, okay, people stop paying suppliers, but then it causes supply chain problems because your suppliers don't want to work with you. They don't deliver goods anymore. They don't want to serve you anymore because you're known as a slow payer and things like that, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Get cash in quicker from customers. You go hard and fast on your customers with you're on stop because you're 2 days late paying us, and your customer buggers off and doesn't want to deal with you anymore. Or the finance team start pulling back on payment terms because they don't want to give payment terms to customers in the first place because it slows down cash collection. So you've really, really got to be careful when you're setting these well-meant KPIs for your team, making sure that they're well-rounded and that they deliver the outcome that you want. So we're going to give you 3 tips today about how you can set a KPI that makes sure that your outcome is what you want it to be and what your business needs it to be.
Yes. And the first one is we're going to be playing with shapes, aren't we?
Yes.
What is it?
So this first one I call a KPI triangle, and this is all about...
This is like the fire triangle that I learnt in school.
I have no idea what you're saying.
Oxygen, fuel, something else. The 3 things that create a fire. It's a bit like that. You stole this from the fire triangle.
No,
the fire brigade. No,
I don't know what you're talking about. This is a KPI triangle, Simon, and this is about making sure that when you have a main metric, such as gross sales, you've also got 2 supporting metrics to make sure that there's not unintended consequences.
Yeah.
So your main metric might be sales growth, okay, but that sales growth has got to be at 25% GP. And you've got to have a net promoter score from your customers of X.
Yeah.
So you set those 2 supporting metrics to make sure that they're not just going and getting sales growth at any cost. It fits with the wider goals of your business, that you want a strong margin and you want repeating happy customers.
This is perfect. I love it.
So for anything that you're doing, it should always have a KPI triangle. So if you think, is it an isosceles triangle where it's like a tall, thin one? So you've got your main like North Star of a KPI, which is sales growth, but then your other 2 are your base, your foundation, to make sure that nothing topples over and falls down.
Right. Can I give you an example of how I use a triangle?
Go for it.
For something.
And it's not fire related.
It's not fire related. This is about the fee that we charge. We sell houses, as people probably know, the fee that we charge to sell a house. So we have a set fee that we charge a percentage, 1.2% plus VAT. And we don't really move from that. But then maybe it's like if somebody's trying to negotiate or we're going to discount, then it needs to meet this triangle criteria. And therefore, we need one side of the triangle is that the person is motivated, genuinely motivated to sell. They're motivated to move. They're not just trying the market. So you've got the motivation. The second one is they agree with the price that you valued the property at. They're not unrealistic. They're not going to overprice it. They agree with your price, so therefore the property is sellable.
Look, this isn't really a KPI. This isn't like a metric that you would track. This is more like a process that you would follow. If you're going to discount, X, Y, and Z must be in place. So it's really good to have that, but it's not quite the KPI triangle that we're looking at. So, for example,
but it's the same difference about saying to your team, no, you can't just discount. You must meet this criteria.
But that's not a KPI, that's a process. So take sales out of the equation. It might be that you expect your operations team to ship X amount of parcels per day. Well, they've got to be packaged well, and they can't have, the percentage of errors or defects must be below a certain rate. So if you're shipping 1,000 parcels a day, and that's the KPI that you want your warehouse team to meet, ship 1,000 parcels a day, they could put anything in any old box with any old packaging. It's going to go into the postal system, get battered, customers are going to get the wrong products, etc. So the main KPI, ship 1,000 products a day. The supporting KPI is around accuracy and returns.
Yeah, I mean, what you're trying to support here. If somebody said the KPI is, Mr. CEO, I want you to grow the market share of this business. Well, the easiest way to grow the market share of any business is to just price half the price of everyone else. So you're trying to protect against.
The purpose is you don't want somebody to shortcut the KPI. You don't want them to take the quickest, shortest route to achieve that result. You want them to take sometimes the harder route that is for the best of the business in the long term.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure that you're really rounded in what you're delivering to somebody. It's not just sales growth. It's not just deliveries out. It's not just cash collection. There's underlying metrics because we don't want unintended consequences. We can't take the quick, short route. Yeah. We have to take the long-term route that's best for the results of the business in the long term.
Yeah.
And that's what you've got to make sure somebody does.
Cool.
It also just helps to raise awareness in your business of, if I pull this lever, there's all these other things in the background that you might not be aware of that happens. Yeah. And just helping people raise that awareness of, when you do this, these are the consequences that maybe you don't see and maybe you're not aware of.
This is like, I mean, it's more of an issue the bigger you get. It is that thing of, okay, even saying grow market share and maintain profitability is a real problem, because for every customer that you buy, it's more pressure on the finance department, more pressure on the ops department, more pressure. They need more people, they're stressed, then they need to recruit somebody, and then before you know it, so actually, can you control maintaining profitability? Because there's so many unintended additional distractions that come with it. It's difficult.
Yeah. So using this KPI triangle not only helps you keep focused on your KPIs and making sure that it's in the interest of the business on a long-term basis, but it also helps to build your team's awareness and business understanding a little bit better, and understand the complexity of what it actually means to run a business. It's never just one thing, it's lots of things that happen. So that's the KPI triangle. Then the next thing that you need to make sure you're doing when you're setting a KPI is that you're measuring impact, not actions.
Yeah.
And this is probably the mistake that I see a lot of people making when they set KPIs for people, is that firstly, business owners tend to only set KPIs for their sales team. That would be the first mistake. And secondly, when they use them for the wider business, they tend to almost be as like a performance management situation. So somebody might not be performing, and so I'm going to set you these KPIs. This is what I expect you to achieve. And it's like, actually, that's what's required to do your job and get paid every month. That's not a KPI.
Yeah.
A KPI isn't, they're not. So an example would be if you've got somebody in your credit control department and they're not chasing debt effectively, setting them a KPI to call X amount of customers every day. That's not a KPI. That's not driving your business in the right direction. That is a basic requirement of doing your job.
Okay.
Do you see the slight difference there? So setting somebody a target to call...
But achieving those things is a key...
Setting somebody a target to call X amount of customers a day is an action. How do you know that action delivers impact in your business? So what you actually need to do is set a KPI based on impact. The impact that I want you to deliver is, I want you to reduce the amount of time that it takes customers to pay us.
Okay.
How you do that,
Yep.
we might discuss. You might set your team member free to decide
Yep.
how they achieve that. You might coach them and give them some directions about to achieve this. In my experience, you need X amount of calls. You need to do this. You need
Yep.
to do that. So that will depend on the level of your team. But the impact that you want is you want your debtor days to come down.
Yep.
Or the impact that you want is that you want your sales to grow. It's
Yep.
not about number of customer visits or number of calls or anything like that. That's
Yeah.
action.
Yeah. It's the output.
Yeah,
Yeah, you KPI the output.
not the input.
Yeah.
Clear on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the third thing that you need to consider when you're setting KPIs is that they must be trackable, and they must be trackable easily, at least weekly. I see lots of managers that will set KPIs for their teams, and then every month they'll call their team member into a meeting and they'll tell their team member how they performed against that KPI and whether they were on track or not.
Yeah.
And the manager or the manager's PA is the one that's doing all the number crunching and saying whether this person has hit their target or not. And it's like, well, how does that team member know throughout the month whether they're on track or not?
Yeah.
They literally just come into a meeting once a month or get an email that says you're on track or not. How do they really change the trajectory or the direction that they're heading in on a monthly basis if they're not able to track it themselves?
Yeah.
So it's really, really important that ideally live information would be gold standard. But,
Yeah.
We're small businesses here. We might not be able to invest in fancy systems and things like that. So as a minimum, every week, that individual needs to be able to see whether they're on track or not. I'm not saying that you as the manager needs to review that weekly, but the individual does. The individual needs to know whether they're on track, because if they're not on track, they need to change the direction that they're travelling in.
Okay, cool. I've just been thinking about something I don't quite get. So the impact, not action, just to roll back to that, because I'm struggling with that. I'm struggling with that a bit. I'm trying to put it into lots of different contexts and whatever else, because especially if it's down to managing people, because if I think about the outcome, if I'm managing somebody against that's challenging, because the outcome isn't under our control. The input is under our control. So, for example, if I said to one of my team, the KPI is that they must sell 10 houses a month.
Okay.
That's not in their control. What's in their control is the actions they take, which may lead to 10 houses. So they must make 20 calls a day. We know that consistency of certain actions are most likely to lead to the result. But to say sell 10 houses a month, the market might collapse next month.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, I'm struggling with that one, how you would manage that through people as a manageable KPI, so to speak. I get that for the business, it's the right aim. The aim is to want to sell 10 houses, but actually you've got no control over whether you sell 10 houses or not.
But then that just needs to fluctuate, doesn't it? So there's two things. So firstly, when I sit down every month and review the KPIs with my team, it's not a stick to beat somebody and say, well done, or you're not doing good enough. It's why. Why did you achieve that? If you achieved it, what went really well that helped us achieve that?
Yeah.
So was it that you did loads of calls? Was it that the market's buoyant? What is it that we can learn and repeat in the business? Or if you're not on track, what do you need help with, or what's not working? And that's what the focus is. So therefore, this arbitrary target of 10 houses needs to be adjusted depending on the market and the circumstances that you're in.
But you don't know that.
You do know it.
You don't know it in a lot of businesses.
As a business owner, you should know that.
The only thing I think is
you should know the market that you're operating in.
You don't, because the market changes next week, so you wouldn't know what you're going into. So you couldn't set a KPI now for the end of next month. You wouldn't know what the next 4 weeks. You'd have to be Mystic Meg, wouldn't you? So you can't predict what economic. It's macroeconomics. It's very challenging.
But it's moving far slower. So the thing with KPIs is that they're not fixed for years to come. It's not something that you set now and forget about forever. It's like it constantly evolves.
Yeah.
And constantly changes.
I'm more thinking like I look at the businesses that have really bad morale. So if I look at big corporate, this is very corporate, and I just wonder whether it's always worse, because if you look at big corporates, they have terrible morale, they have big staff turnover, and this is exactly what they do. So in the estate agency world, they set this target and they drag the person in the hole, said, your target, you should have sold 10 houses this month. Yeah. And they beat them up. And then they're like, but you can see I've worked my arse off. I've done everything I could do. I can't control If people are not buying at the moment, they're not buying. Like, but I've literally done 200 viewings. I've done 20 calls a day. I've done everything I can do, but people are not buying at the moment because they're so scared. They're hoarding money because of the
But again,
economy.
I would say that links back to what we were talking about earlier, that comes back to a cultural issue in your business. It's not a stick to beat people with. It's not a thing to embarrass people. It's not a thing to manage somebody's performance.
But it's always, as a human, going to make you feel like crap when you've done everything you can, but you can't achieve that goal because it's out of your control.
But if everybody is consistently coming in and not hitting the target's wrong.
Yeah, fair enough.
Change the target. You know, you've got to apply a bit of intelligence to this, and you've got to you know, if you're going to put yourself in that position of managing director and you're going to be setting objectives for your team and taking responsibility for driving the business in a certain direction and setting the culture, you've got to be capable of doing that, and that does require you to have a certain management skill.
It's got me thinking, because I do the complete opposite. I manage consistency of what we can control. So it's like, you know, you've done those 20 calls every day because we know that you make the calls, you get the business. You know,
that's different though. That's a to-do list, and that's a requirement of somebody's job. This is, in order to succeed in your job, these are the things that you need to do. But these are the outcomes that we expect you to deliver. And 9 times out of 10, that outcome does not come from turning up and doing the job alone. It doesn't come from just calling people. It's calling people in the right way, in the effective way, doing the right thing, doing the long-term thing, not the short-term thing. It's that drives those KPIs and not actions. Because somebody can call somebody and have a terrible call and have no outcome from it, versus somebody else that calls somebody in a really effective way and gets the right outcome and drives that KPI. So the action alone doesn't guarantee success, and that's why you can't just track the action.
I don't know if I agree with that, but it's interesting. It's an interesting thing. We see it. You know, the person that just shows up and does the 20 calls a day versus the person that's done 2. If they do 20 crap calls, they're still going to outdo the person that's done 2 that are half reasonable, because the reality is you don't know what's at the other end of that call. So you've got to just plough through the numbers. It's the go for no thing, you know.
Right,
you need 19 rejections to get 1 yes, and just picking up the phone to 2. So it doesn't matter.
But that's somebody's job specification, isn't it? To have this job, I expect that you make 20 calls a day, you book 5 appointments, and you do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
That's somebody's job description. That's not a KPI that ensures that your business continues to grow in the right direction. Because that's what these KPIs are. The KPIs are keeping the business on track long term, not keeping the individual on track.
Okay.
To-do lists and actions keep individuals on track. KPIs keep businesses on track. And that's the difference.
Cool. Excellent.
I feel like
Any more?
This could get a bit heated between us if we don't end
No,
this
it's
now.
just, we just, I hadn't thought about it that way. I think holistically, you're right. You're coming from it from a perspective of sat around the board table analysing the number and the ultimate number that matters. I get it. That is the KPI. And I'm coming at it from much more tactical, managing your people perspective. That's all the differences. And, you just know the things that drive the result. Ultimately, like, it's like going to the gym. The reality is you can't really, your genetics and everything else are going to determine lots of how muscly you're going to get. But the ultimate thing is that if you can force yourself to turn up 4 times a week and do the things that are there, then the best outcomes that can possibly come out is going to come out the other end.
I do agree to some extent. However, you talking about the tactical management of the team, I think, again, goes full circle to the conversation we were having around the culture in the business, is that you cannot be micromanaging your team to make sure that they're doing the requirements of their job. That should be a given, and you should be able to know whether they're
anybody under 80 grand a year, you got to.
No,
they just don't exist in this world. I don't. They're just not.
I'm not saying you turn a blind eye.
There's one saying. Let me just say this saying. There's one saying. You manage the systems, you don't manage the people. And that is you look at McDonald's, you look at everyone else. You don't try and manage people. People are unmanageable. You manage the system. And the system is 20 calls a day or whatever it is, whatever the input is. That's just my view. This one will probably disagree. You are coming at it from a very trusting, but I think you're thinking too much about yourself and me and people that operate at a level that is in the top 1%, not the norm.
I think that you are right, in that you have to manage boots on the ground on a day-to-day basis, and you have to make sure that your team are doing what they need to do, and you need to drive performance and make sure that each team member is contributing. That's absolutely true, but we're talking about KPIs here. We're
Okay,
not talking
yeah.
about team management. There's a difference between team management and driving the growth of the business forward. And I think that's where that slight nuance comes in. And a high-performing team is one that is driven from KPIs, not monitored and micromanaged. And you're talking about, I think, some of what you're talking about strays into micromanagement, and that doesn't.
I'm not really talking
result
about
in a
micromanagement.
high-performing
I just know what the inputs need to be for the output to come out pretty much consistent each time. But anyway, it wasn't meant to be a battle off, but it was a good battle off, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think our marriage survived, though. We're still friends, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like everything is like, it is what it is, isn't it? I don't care either way. It's just you disagree. Like, this is why we have Labour and why we have Conservative. You disagree. There's,
I think I
life,
come quite, maybe naively, I don't know. Some people will say, oh, you're not
probably not been
enough,
in the trenches as often as I've been with things, so you probably have a slightly different view, don't you?
But I would argue that I've not been in the trenches as much as you, because I focus on culture and empowerment and developing people and setting the right KPIs, not micromanaging people. So you can swing it either way. You can say I haven't been in the trenches enough, but why haven't I been in the trenches enough? I've managed bigger teams than you have.
Yeah, and all you do is complain about the people in your team over years about how they're not good enough. So systems, processes.
Look,
in corporate, they're hard. Corporate, we just talked about revenge quitters, haven't we?
I genuinely come from the place that I think most people are good and they've got good intentions and they want to do good and deliver good things.
Great. They just need good systems behind them to keep them
the culture,
on track.
The culture to allow it to happen.
We're in agreement, so we finish in agreement. I like it. Let's move on to this week's Profit Cash Growth Extra. So this week, it's yours, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah,
well, you've taken it over.
It's in your office.
I know,
and
you walk into my office and take the best seat in the house every day, don't you? My standing desk.
New standing desk, yeah. This week's Profit Cash Growth is get a standing desk. I like standing desks.
It's a no-brainer, isn't it? We used to have his and hers matching desks, didn't we, in our home office?
Can't do it for long. It actually makes me uncomfortable standing after too long, but it's really good, especially in the morning. I don't like to get out of bed and then roll out of bed and sit on the seat.
I agree with that. I go in the morning, I use it when I'm doing my LinkedIn, checking my emails, setting everything up for the day. And then when I'm doing focused work, I go and sit down. Because actually, that's a scientific thing, that when you're doing focused work, you should sit down. And when you're doing work that you need energy for, you should stand up.
Yeah.
Quick, snappy work, like sorting your inbox, doing your LinkedIn, all of that type of thing.
You are right. When I try and do the focus work, when I'm standing, I feel like I've got to wheel the desk. I say wheel it because it is manual. Wheel the desk.
I made a bit of a mistake there with what I ordered.
The desk, it takes about 4 hours, like I'm cranking up a car or something as it goes down. But yeah, so that's my Profit Cash Growth of the week. Try a standing desk if you've not. It's well worth just mixing up your day, especially if you spend a lot of time at a desk. So thanks for joining us for another week's podcast. As always, if you feel like you might have outgrown your current accountant, you'd like to talk to Claire and the team of Profit Cash Growth, whiz over to the website profitcashgrowth.com. On there you can book a call to chat with them about any of your needs or wants in the finance functions. You can order a free copy of Claire's book, Profit by Numbers, on there. You can listen to all of the back catalogue of the podcast. And as always, please share this episode with a friend that you know who may find it useful. And we will certainly, most certainly, see you again next week.